paper. In the past, we are forced to publish paper, especially in progress. 3 years ago, the government also emphasized that we are not only required to produce paper, but also to create prototype or even product to become outcome of the research at university. In ITS, also our rector changed the policy. We are encouraged to produce patent and also intellectual property as an outcome for our research. Today, we have Andri as lecturer at university and Hugh Thomas. And the problem that we are faced at university, especially after we publish the paper, sometimes we don't know what to do next. Sometimes our product cannot be commercial. There are many things that cause this problem. One is the linkage between industry and university is not as good as in Australia. And secondly, this is the problem of who will finance the commercialization. I think during the last 3 years, we have a scheme from the Minister of respectively. We call it matching fund. So the fund from university and from industry. But still, we have a problem in commercialization. I think we knew the term, the falling of debt in commercialization. I think this Thomas today we will give a lecture about how to overcome this problem so that we can commercialize our research into useful product for industry and society. I think that's all from me. Again, many thanks to Pak Martin, who come far away from Australia. I think we should give him a big applause. Also, Prof. Andri, he has been here since Monday when we had a lot of activities. We had a curriculum discussion. We have what we call workshop for publishing international journal and many more. So, again, applause for Pak Andri. I hope this event is only a beginning. We hope many activities in the future, Pak Martin and Pak Andri. And again, thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
So much for the testimony. So, let's go into the main session. The following session is the main event today. So, now it's time for the first topic presentation from the speaker, Mr. Hugh Thomas, followed by a discussion, question and answer to the moderator. The available with the participant is welcome to take over. Thank you.
So if you can't hear me, let me know. My voice. So first, thank you very much for those suggestions. I'm hoping the literature I provide is a little bit different than the normal that you get at the
suruh taruh sini kalau
in the sense that
Sorry for interrupting.
you want me to wear something?
It's for the online participants.
Okay, so what do I do? Plug it on?
Just like put it on,
Yep.
plug it on. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry
No,
for the
that's okay. Okay, makasih ya. So hopefully this lecture is a little bit different to normal. So this is, I'm going to try and do a real world lecture as opposed to an academic lecture. And what I'm hoping to do is try and use a live example where SUVO, which was mentioned at the beginning, where I'm the managing director or president director in Indonesian speak, is already embarking on trying to commercialize an opportunity with Murdoch University in Australia, hence Professor Andri being here. But also we're very interested in some of the work that ITS is doing, and therefore we see an opportunity to potentially come and participate with ITS in the future. So that's going to be the premise for today. A couple of little warnings. I'm an excitable bule or excitable Westerner, so I will probably start speaking very, very quickly. If I do start speaking too quickly, please, someone put their hand up and say, slow down, you're going way too fast, because I'm like that. I like it when it's interactive. So if you have questions as we're going through, please don't be shy to ask them, okay? I've lived in Indonesia a long time, or I did live in Indonesia for a long time. I know culturally, sometimes we feel awkward putting up our hand and wanting to ask a question. Please do so. You're going to get much more benefit out of asking me the questions than you are out of me just standing up here and talking. The other thing you'll find is I can't follow a presentation. So I'm going to walk around and talk, and hopefully it kind of loosely follows my slides. So maybe, is it up on here? Oh, there's a presentation that needs to, oh, there we go. Perfect. So let me, how do I click this so it goes up? Oh, there we go. Oh, perfect. Someone's already got it under control. Thank you. So look, I guess the first question is, maybe we can go to the first slide, is the first question is, if we can change the slide. There we go. So Hugh Thomas, why am I here? Okay, so it's always difficult putting a slide up about yourself, but here we go. As mentioned, you know, I'm the president director of and CEO of SUVO Strategic Minerals Limited. I'll explain why that's important to this lecture in a minute. I'm also a commissioner of a couple other mining companies in Australia. But previously, and probably more important for this lecture, is I used to be a banker, right? So I was a very senior banker at JP Morgan, based in Hong Kong, but I basically ran JP Morgan's natural resource practice for Asia, and I was the global head of research for JP Morgan. After my banking career, I actually moved to Indonesia. For those who might like the idea, my wife's actually Indonesian, so I met her at JP Morgan, and we came down here, and I set up private equity funds with some ex-colleagues from JP Morgan, and so I basically was basically banking innovation. So people would come to us with clever ideas. We'd go, yes, we can help you. We'll write the check and develop it. And that was both in Indonesia and, in fact, for the benefit of Professor Andri. I actually did one in Malaysia as well with Axiata, the big telco company. And those products that we banked or we developed were across a wide gamut of things. We did IT stuff. So we were involved in the tap payment system in Jakarta on the buses. So we bankrolled that. One that wasn't very successful, but I'll admit it, was Barabanca, which was an online shopping and physical shopping thing. We funded that. We did a lot of work with Credit Plus, the largest independent credit provider in Indonesia. Actually, I was heavily involved in funding Pelindo 3 Port just down the road here, so I know Surabaya very well. I spent a long time here working with the government on funding that. I worked on Jokowi's maritime highway that he wanted to build with ferries from Medan down to across to Surabaya, actually, via Jakarta. And so hopefully I have a depth of experience that I can share with you from an Indonesian perspective as well as from an international perspective. I guess the reason I put two photos up there is the top photo is what you look like as a banker, and the bottom photo is all the worry you get when you have to actually try and work out how to do all these things. But basically you can see from the background there that hopefully I'm got some credibility in being able to talk to you today about how these things have happened. Now, a lot of the conversation is going to be around academia versus the commercial world. So to show that I have some empathy for academia, if you can put the next slide up, and this is a little bit of a joke. My father was a professor, so hopefully I can give you the academic perspective as well. And so my father was a professor of mining engineering in Australia at the University of New South Wales. I am delighted to say, if you look at the right-hand photo, that's from 1990, and proudly there's an Indonesian postgrad student working with him. So I grew up in an academic household. And the joke I have is that means I know that an academic can't give me a yes or no answer, right? It's impossible to get a yes or no answer from an academic. So my relationship with my father, I'd ask him a question and I'd say, Dad, yes or no, and he could never say it. It's always, oh, but we need to do this, or you need to look at that, or we need to carry on. So hopefully when I'm talking today, I'm sympathetic to the academic side and not just the wealth side or the commercialization side. So that was a bit of fun. And so my father did a Ph.D. in rock mechanics, which is why when you dig a hole, it doesn't fall in on you. That's what his Ph.D. was on. So yeah, proudly an academic son, but I went down a different path. So academic commercialization, why is it so relevant today? Very, very simple in many ways. 50 years ago, large corporations had their own research labs. If you went to GE in America, or you went to BASF in Germany, or you went to Procter & Gamble, or even the big banks, they all had their own internal research departments. So they'd have their own labs, they've had their own technicians. Even if you look at many of the famous now IT stocks like Google and Facebook and all those things, they're the new generation. Where did they all spurn from? Where did they all come from? They actually came from students like you sitting around socializing and coming up with ideas. So what's happened is we've had this transition over the last 50 years where major organizations don't invest in their own research departments anymore. They've basically outsourced it to academia, right? So why are you all incredibly important to the commercial world? Because you're the ideas, right? Now, occasionally companies will come to universities and say, hey, we've got a problem. Can we fix it? Can you help fix it? But that, from the research that I've read, that's actually quite a small percentage of the academic rigor and the research rigor that goes on around the world. So at the end of the day, the vast majority of the cleverness, a lot of the IP, a lot of the concepts around processing, even organizational behavior on how to run companies better come from places like MIT, Cambridge, Melbourne University and ITS. And so this whole relationship that needs to be developed between academia and the commercial world is incredibly important if you want to be, an innovator and a visionary, or even if you've got a traditional business like SUVO and you want to take it forward. And so, so that's why this is incredibly important. And so if we move to the next, oh no, actually don't. I'm going to give a little bit of a background story. It's the one note I made to myself this morning, and I don't need this anymore. Just before we go to the next part of the presentation, cynically, you could sit there and say, why am I here? Why have I come today, given up my time to come and talk to ITS? Yeah? And here's the reason why. And this is a real situation, but you can multiply this thousands of times around the world as we're speaking. So Mr. Aaron Banks, who's sitting down here in the black shirt this morning, is the chief commissioner or chairman of a company called SUVO Strategic Minerals Limited in Australia. He's also the major shareholder and in many ways the visionary of where SUVO is going. Aaron and I met 5-6 months ago. So I haven't been at SUVO long, about 6 months ago. And Aaron shared with me what he was trying to do and the frustrations of which he was having around how to move it forward, how to commercialize it. And this story is important because SUVO's traditional business is kaolin, right? Now, kaolin's a material which Indonesia's got lots of. It's got it all in Bangka Belitung and other deposits around the world, around the islands. But Bangka Belitung's the main area. Kaolin is a material that's used in a vast variety of applications. It goes into paper, it goes into ceramics, it goes into paint, it goes into pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, but we're always looking for what are the new applications of kaolin. And the fact that the vast majority of you here today, I understand, are from civil engineering or engineering, this is where it becomes relevant. One of the opportunities that Aaron had or could foresee was the use of kaolin in something called metakaolin, right? Now, metakaolin, without wanting to get technical, because I'm not the chemistry guy, I'll keep this at a finance level. Metakaolin is like the super juice or the magic sprinkle you can put into the cement industry, whether that's traditional Portland cement or whether that's the newer geopolymer cements, which is where we're about to head in this conversation. And so he could see the opportunity. So we had kaolin, we had hydrous kaolin, which means we process it with water. And to make metakaolin, you basically calcinate the hydrous kaolin. And so Aaron and his team could see that opportunity. He could see that the world was going to reducing CO2s. He could see that metakaolin had a role in that. But in typical fashion, your mind races even further forward. And so what was the very interesting aspect that Aaron particularly picked up on was the ability to use metakaolin in geopolymer cement. And for those of you who haven't fallen under the incredible knowledge of Bayuaji here, geopolymer cement is basically making chemically based cement from alumina silicate and high alkali products, so sodium hydroxide, sodium silicate. And that chemical process is much more beneficial from a CO2 perspective than traditional Portland cement. So we saw a wonderful marketing opportunity, or Aaron saw a wonderful marketing opportunity. So that's why I got involved. Aaron basically said, hey, I'd really like some help in running the organization because we can see this opportunity. Would you come and play to help see if the whole geopolymer cement basis works? So now, before moving to the next slide, again, cynically, why am I here today at ITS? Because believe it or not, within ITS, you have some of the cleverest people on the planet that I've found so far who know about geopolymer cement. So yes, it's nice that I'm doing a lecture and I'm happy to be here, but if you want from the commercial perspective of why I'm here, it's because there's knowledge in here that I would love, right? And so what have I done? I've come from the commercial world, I've crossed the abyss, I've come to the academic world to say, help me, right? Now we're doing that with Murdoch University, which is why Prof. Anders sitting at the front smiling. But he's got some great knowledge in certain aspects of geopolymer and we're working with them. Bayuaji and her team have knowledge in other areas which we're interested in, we're excited about. Now, who knows what will happen? That's what this whole lecture is about. Who knows? But I'd love to think that down the track, I'm here more often, more than happy to come and lecture because we've developed a relationship with ITS around commercialization of aspects of geopolymer cement. So that's the backstory for kind of why I'm here today. So if we can flick to the next slide, if we can, which hopefully it comes up so I can then start speaking. So, because I'll need to jot myself what I'm supposed to say next. There we go. Okay. So I thought it would be very helpful just at the beginning, and this is a little bit more for the lecturers and the administrative staff and the students, but I thought it was worth just covering the traditional models that academia have used for commercialization, right? And so what we've got, I've tried to represent it on a kind of simplistic graph, is, you know, the three approaches which currently exist in the world for universities to commercialize things. Number one, basically some universities have gone to a full in-house model. And what I mean by that is within the university itself, they have innovation parks, they have industry working with them, and it is part of, inextricably linked with the university. Right? And they've been incredibly successful, some of them. I'll talk about it. As you can imagine, the leading universities of the world, with no disrespect to my alumni or ITS, the leading universities of the world have gone down this model, whether that's Cambridge University, whether that's MIT, whether that's Stanford. Very early on, in fact, back in the 70s, they realized that transition from the corporate world unwinding their labs to the universities taking over was happening. And so they were very, very innovative in terms of setting up industrial parks or innovation parks within their campuses. I will do one slide on that after this just to say how successful it can be. The next level down, and basically number 2 is where the vast majority of universities in the world probably sit, which is they've got technology transfer officers or TTOs. So if university comes up, so academia, students come up with IP or intellectual property, whether that's around formulation or process or whatever. So as engineering students, you've got IP in clever formulations you might have around, say, the cement industry, and I'll keep using it as the example as I go through. But it might be clever IP around how you mix or process that. It might be clever ideas around how you cast it. The IP can be around all sorts of different elements. So universities set up TTO offices and they've got commercialization staff. Now, I have to be a little bit careful, so I'm not now talking about ITS, I'm just talking about this as a general model. On the whole, those offices have not necessarily been fantastic. Right? Firstly, there's always this conflict between what the university wants and what the academic who's created the IP wants. And that's a difficult bridge to have to think. And it also comes down to the individual, the academic. Some academics are purely just researchers and want to be researchers for life, and that's what they love. Others have a more entrepreneurial flair to them and actually like the concept of money. And therefore, they want to go down a different path than being the purest researcher academic. Now, interestingly, I'll do 3 first and then come back and make a comment again. So, and then some universities have no TTO officers, they have no commercialization people, but there are wonderful examples where there's still been very, very successful commercialization. But that has come because of the quality of the academic or the quality of the researcher. It comes down to their personality. I'll be careful. I'm sorry, I'm in Indonesia. So they've made an effort. I was going to use an Australianism. They got off their hands. They made an effort to actually go out there and commercialise. And without being horrid to Murdoch University, McMartin's the only one there today, although if there's administrators from Murdoch watching online, sorry. We didn't get involved with Murdoch University because a TTO officer came from Murdoch University to SUVO and say, hey, we've got this thing called geopolymer cement, and we need some help with it. We got involved with Murdoch University because Professor Andri came to us via some circuitous route. I have no idea what the true background story is, but he managed to get involved with SUVO, and we liked the idea. So it actually wasn't 2 that got us involved with Murdoch University. It was 3. And to be honest, the whole reason I'm here today at ITS is actually 3 and not 2, because through Martin's connections with Bayuaji, I was introduced to ITS a month ago when I was up here before. And it's that has resulted in me now understanding how advanced ITS is in geopolymer and why I'm here today. So whilst it's an incredible joy to provide the lecture to you, it was also lovely to have further conversations with Bayuaji and her colleagues about what the university can do around geopolymer. Just quickly on 2. There was a recent, because I'd like to be an academic, but I'm not, I did do some literary research on this point. And so point two, in America, and therefore it's got a Western bias, which we have to be careful of. But in America, they did a survey over the last 20 years of 178 universities around commercialization of IP and the value the universities got from that commercialization. And to cut a long story short, the conclusions from the literary research and the additional empirical work that they did was the universities were only getting about 16% the value of the IP, and the rest was going to industry. Only 16%. Now, from a commercialization perspective, I love that number, right? Because that means I'm greedy and I'm getting 84% of the benefit. From a university number, you should be worried. Because imagine when I put some numbers up in a minute of how much that value of that was. So here, that study concluded, and if people get interested, please WhatsApp me at the end and I can forward the literary research material to you. But what was very fascinating about it is in America, the study was from 2 years ago. So in 2021, which was a COVID year, so not a great year, the universities received from their IP patents, those surveyed, not all the universities, those surveyed, received $9.1 billion worth of benefit. But that was for 16%. All of you are engineering students, so you can take 16% and divide it through and work 9.1 and work out how much the size and the value was to the commercialization side. Right? So academia and business working together, there's a history, but is the relationship right yet? Okay. If we go to the next slide, it's worth looking at Cambridge University. Now, this is the Rolls Royce. This is the ultimate example of university, academia, and private enterprise or commercialization working together. University, what was called the Cambridge cluster. So, and it's around Cambridge, the town in the UK. It began in 1960 when when they formed Cambridge Consultants. So basically, a group of clever academics got together at Cambridge and said, you know what, we're one of the best universities in the world. Why aren't we leveraging our knowledge? Why aren't we leveraging our skills? 1960, they started this. By 1970, one college at Cambridge University, obviously a famous one and a reasonably well-funded one, Trinity College, been around for 1,000 years almost, turned around and said, you know what, we're so keen on this, we're going to build an innovation centre at Cambridge University. So they made the investment. Again, so I don't talk for too long, because I will, it's worth spending a little bit of time on it, because now that Cambridge cluster, driven by a university, innovated by a university, now working with industry, has 26,000 companies working in that innovation part. Their turnover, and I'm sorry it's in pounds, but is 48 billion pounds. So I can't do the number of noughts in repair because it just gets too many. But that's about 65 billion US dollars. Yeah. So we're talking trillions and trillions of rupiah. It employs 227,000 people. So what's the population of Surabaya? 3 million, roughly? 2 million. So they've now got an innovation park with 10% the population of Surabaya working there, purely because it's an academic commercial relationship that's working. You can read the rest of the statistics. The one that I didn't put up there because I found it too late was Cambridge University, the value of the innovation that they hold, either directly or through the investments in the companies that they have in that innovation park, is over 50 billion pounds, right? Which is about 70 billion US dollars of value that they own, that the university, Cambridge University, owns. Okay, it's taken them some time, but they were visionary. And so the important part just for this was to go through the models and say, okay, Cambridge is the best case. It's the number one in terms of having done this. MIT is not far behind. Stanford's not far behind. But what I would say to you students, nag your administrators and say, hey, we should be trying this stuff. Because if you can create this, your path and your joy to having wonderful academic lives where you know that the work you do gets valued not just because you've written your paper to satisfy your Ph.D. or to hold your position, but because you've actually got contribution which is fast and sound and demonstrable, right? That's the dream model for every university I would suggest to you around the world. If we go to the next slide. Okay, let me get on to the bit that I love the most. Academics and commercial people have different mindsets. Right? This is very, very important to understand. So what I've tried to do here is joke and say, obviously the hand overreaching from the top is academia, and there I am begging with my money to say, please, can I help you? Yep. And I had to show that I had a maths background, so I've got the correlation coefficient statistic up there to basically say, how often do these two things correlate? Yeah. And sadly, not as often as we would like is the answer. So understanding these divergent interests becomes very, very important to being able to be successful for both parties, whether that's for academia or whether that's for us to be able to commercialize things successfully. So let me use an example I used last night at a dinner, and the guilty parties are sitting down here, so who can attest to it. From an academic perspective, I'm very, geopolymer cement is around finding that perfect formula. What's that perfect way of making geopolymer cement? So, Professor Yanni, I was going to call you Martin, Professor An, and Professor Andri, who's going to talk later. Their dream, and I'm being presumptuous, but their dream is coming up with the geopolymer formula on the planet. That's what they want to do. They want to find the best of everything and put it in there. When they go to bed at night, the thing that excites them is, oh my gosh, we've worked out how to use metakaolin better, or we've worked out how to find some new input to make that cement, even geopolymer cement, even stronger, or we found a way to accelerate how it sets. And I get that. And I get that's their motivation, and I get that that's what they dream about. As a commercialization guy, I hate to tell you, I don't dream about that stuff, right? I'm delighted that they do, but that's not what gets me going. Because at the end of the day, being a commercialization guy is around, can I sell it, right? That's what I think about. Can I make money out of it? Can I sell it? So my view is, oh my gosh, I've got to be able to sell this stuff. Their view is, how do I make it perfect, right? Now, the trouble is, and this is why I wanted to give you the backstory about SUVO and the fact that we're interested in geopolymer cement. I know if I asked each of the three distinguished professors down at the front here what was the best mix for geopolymer cement, even now they wouldn't agree. Right? So I got three different answers to a very simple question. Give me the best formula, right? They won't agree. And their research is all going down slightly different paths to come up with the perfect solution. Right? From the commercialization point of view, I'm not interested in that. I'm delighted they're doing it, as I said, but I'm not interested. What I'm interested is, can you come up with a formula where there's enough of everything, the inputs for sodium silicate, the sodium hydroxide, the alumina silicate base that we're using, whether that's fly ash or GGBS or nickel slag, red mud from bauxite. What I'm interested about is there enough of those raw materials that I can create a business that's going to run for 20 or 30 years? So I don't need the world's best geopolymer formula. I need the formula which has sufficient robustness that on a commercialization basis, I know there's enough raw materials around to be able to change the world for good. So we both have that interest of wanting to develop geopolymer. We both want to reduce CO2 emissions. We both believe that the traditional cement industry, which is the single largest CO2 emitter in the world as an industry, needs to be changed. Their desire is perfection on formulation. My desire, Aaron's desire, SUVO's desire, other commercialization companies' desire is, can I make $1 out of this to help? And this is why understanding the difference in the mindsets is very, very important for establishing the long-term working relationships that need to exist between academia and those of us who commercialize. So if we go to the next slide, please. So here we go. I think I probably just covered this off. Academia wants perfection. 40 years of being a banker, working in industry, all it tells me, I can do all the spreadsheets, I can work the numbers out, I can identify the market. My life is really, really, really simple at the end of the day. It comes down to two things from a commercialization perspective. Can I sell it? And can I make $1 out of it? That's all I worry about. That's simple. For all the cleverness around the banking world, for all the cleverness around the kids doing finance degrees and your colleagues doing finance degrees, up late at night studying working average cost of capital and DCFs and MPVs and all those things, at the end of the day, it comes down to one question and one question only. Can I sell it? So for all the IP that gets invented in the world, for all the clever ideas that university generates, I'm going to say it again. It's really simple for me. Can I sell it? That's what commercialization is all about. Now, having probably done myself an amazing disservice and saying it is that simple, it then comes down to how does that relationship have to work so we can give ourselves the best chance of success. So if we can flick to the next slide, if we may. Right. Oh, this one's a bit busy. To give yourself the best chance of success, generally you need focus and discipline and an understanding of each other's worlds. I'm sure these slides will get distributed at the end, so I'm sorry that this is a bit of a busy slide and a bit small for the text. But what I was trying to do is when we look at commercialization, there's kind of two parts to it, right? There's the academic readiness, as I've called it, and then there's the commercial readiness. Now, the academic readiness, I hope most of you are familiar with or getting familiar with, and certainly the TTO office here and things should be ready with, which is, from an academic perspective, you go through these steps. You basically go through, and I'll move over here because I've got my wrong glasses on to be able to read clearly. Have basic principles been observed? Are formulations on concept application? Proof of concept? Validation in lab? Validation in relative environments? These are the processes that the academia go through to get to their end. You can actually see where we dovetail in. So commercial is green here. That wasn't to represent us being good or for the US dollar. It just happened to go nicely with the blue, but we have a green here and we will get involved early, right? In many cases, SUVO in relation to geopolymer cement has come in early. So we can see a hypothetical commercial proposition. And we can see it clearly enough that we're prepared to take that risk and come up here and start having the conversations. We want to be involved early. And then you can see as the academic process goes through, where you get to kind of systems being complete and qualified, you've done tests and demos, you've got actual system operations, full range of conditions. And so, for example, with our geopolymer cement, when we say full range of conditions from the academic perspective, it might be, does it work at 100 degrees Celsius and does it work at minus 100 degrees Celsius, because it may get used in Saudi Arabia, it may get used in Mongolia. So have we tested everything? So from the commercial perspective, we then start dovetailing very, very nicely. We start doing our commercial trials. We'll start doing it on a small scale. You know, we'll scale the commercial stuff up. So CR3, CR4, we want to see multiple commercial applications to make sure it can work. CR5, you know, wide spread development and market competition. And then really what we're looking for, and CR6 is the reason I used to get paid a lot of dollars at JP Morgan as opposed to standing here now. They would very much call it in beautiful terminology, has it become a bankable asset class? Simplistically, can I sell it, and can I sell it for $1? That's just the textbook terms for it. So before moving on, it's important to get academia to understand that kind of framework over the top. Now, most of you do academia normally does. You're quite process driven. You've got that discipline, especially in engineering sciences, where it's, you know, it's a numeric based discipline. You're very good at drawing up those plans and those flow charts and making it work. When it comes to so that bit you've got down pat. Generally, what happens is, for example, with CR1 from the commercialization point of view, we're basically doing it at a desktop. So we're in, but we're not spending a lot of money on it yet, right? So I'm happy to come to Surabaya, I'm happy to have the conversations, but I'm not building labs yet, and I'm not saying, you know, here's $1 million, guys, go off and look at this or do this. But I'm emotionally engaged with the concept, and I think it's got work. It's got potential. So we, you know, again, because it's all about money for us, CR1 is a small amount of money. And as we go through each box, you can imagine that our investment's going up and up and up as we de-risk the commercialization parameters. And again, I've got some slides on that going forward. Now, there is something which everyone has to understand from the finance world. And it's one that they don't teach you in the textbooks, and I guarantee they won't be teaching here, even at a master's level in finance or whatever. Old cynical bankers like me joke about the golden rule of finance. Right? And as I said, this is never taught, sadly. It should be taught on day one, but it's not. And the golden rule of finance is, sadly, he who has the gold makes the rules. Right? So, and that sadly in the real world is how it works. If you need money, you've got to convince someone to give it to you. And generally the person who holds the money has a choice. So as a banker, I've got 50 opportunities, or as a venture capitalist, as a private equity fund, I've got 50 opportunities coming to me every day to say, pick me, pick me, pick me. So generally that means if I do pick you, it's on my terms because I've got choice. And this becomes important for some of the almost psychological elements that we're going to discuss moving forward. So if we can go to, again, the next slide, if you'd be so kind. Okay. I've kind of covered this, but I wanted people to admire my ability to find icons on PowerPoint to do this. So a current example, SUVO Strategic Minerals Limited, an Australian public company, which I've covered, is working with Universiti on geopolymer cement and its commercialisation. And as I said, part of being here today is we actually think there's potentially a role for ITS to be involved in that as well. So we both have a common goal. Make me personalise it. There's Martin and arguably the other two professors into geopolymer, and anyone else in here who, you know, we've got some of, you know, master's students and PhD students who are getting into geopolymer. There you are, sitting back, dreaming away. You can see the stars, and I managed to superimpose some conical flasks on there. That's you guys dreaming away. Wow, we're going to make the perfect geopolymer cement. So your goal is, oh my gosh, how are we going to make it? As I said, Aaron and I's goal, anyone else in commercialization, we're sitting there going, oh, we can see the dollars. This one's a good one. How do we get the common theme? How do we get to work that together? Because as I said, the perfect geopolymer binder is not necessarily the easiest one to commercialize. It might be the third best geopolymer binder is the easiest one to commercialize because of availability of materials or the cost of the inputs or whatever. So how do we make sure that the academic world's striving for perfection is aligned with the commercialization world of having to make a return on our investment or having to make $1 or a repair? So I think we've covered that one off a fair bit anyway. So can we flick to next slide? Right, the commercialization mindset. Now, let me just say, there is a section of commercialization which I'm not covering today, and that's the philanthropic side of commercialization. That's where someone, for reasons other than commercial motivation, are helping develop something because they see it from an altruistic perspective. They go, I will pay, like, it's like Bill Gates with his malaria vaccine through Africa. He hasn't done it for money. He's done it because he truly believes that's something that he has the luxury of doing as a wealthy man to help the world. So my discussion kind of excludes those people who are commercializing for philanthropic grounds or because of our faith, it's almost like it's zakat money as opposed to commercialization money, right? So simplistically, it is all about the money from the commercial mindset, as I said. We do go through a rigorous process. As much as I've said it's about the money, I assure you, we go through very, very rigorous processes to do it. And depending on the complexity, it can be quite quick. It can be 3 to 6 months, or it can be years for us to come up with those ideas. So you imagine if it's going to take years, what do you think the single most important factor is for us to be successful over that period? The single most successful factor is, can we all work well together? Do we understand the roles and responsibilities that we all carry in trying to commercialize this opportunity? So if we can flick to the next slide. Right, I deliberately made this slide as busy as I could because I don't want you to read it. This is just to say, when we go through a commercialization process as a banker, of course we go through, things. We look at how are we going to produce it, how are we going to distribute it, how are we going to market it, how are we going to sell it, what's the customer support. We do all the stuff on capital structures, working average cost of capital, DCF models, NPV models, internal rate of return. So, like many of you here, I did my undergraduate degree, I did my postgrad, and went Excel spreadsheets and doing market studies and all those kind of things. So we do go through a rigorous process around that, will something work or not? However,
ada di
go
kelas.
to the next slide,
Ya itulah yang diindakin.
is the truth. And this is the stuff you won't learn at university unless you have people guest lecture and come along and tell you. From my perspective, and it is from my perspective, there would be people who don't agree with me, but they probably are still bankers justifying their existence. My personal view is it's never about the numbers. So when we do all the work, when we do all our DCFs and MPVs and market studies on commercializing something, it either works or it doesn't work. Or if I try and joke about the Surabayan culture, which is, I always love when I'm here, but it's either can or cannot, right? It's either I can or I cannot. So when it comes to the financial analysis, the depth of the market, is the opportunity really going to work or not? We can come up with an answer that says, yes, it will work or it won't. But then we get to the real issue, in my view. And the real issue is, have we got the right people to take this forward? Okay? It's not about the numbers. They have to be done. We have to prove that it can be commercial. But it's about, have we got the right people to be able to carry this forward to make it work? So from my perspective, I look for the right academic team. From your perspective, you should be looking for the people you're talking to who've got the money. Do you feel right with them? is that relationship going to be right? And it's two-way. It's not me going, can I work with academia? It should be the academics and the TTO officers and those things should be saying, oh my gosh, have we spoken to enough people with money to make sure we've picked the one that we feel comfortable with, the one that we think we can work with and move forward with. So the people issue is, in my view, the single most important part of commercialization. So if I personalize it again with the SUVO situation, can Aaron as the chairman, myself as the managing director of SUVO, can our board, can our employees work with the Murdoch University team successfully? Can we do that? Should we move further forward, and we hope it does, can we work with the ITS team to make it work? But simultaneously, you should be saying to yourselves, the universities, oh my gosh, are Hugh and Aaron the right guys? Do we feel comfortable with them? Or should we be looking for someone else with a different source of money? Now, we'd like to think that we're wonderful guys and we're great, but you know, there may be people out there who might be a better match on certain applications than we are. And we will have to be realistic about that, because at the end of the day, success is built around the relationships that you have to develop to move a business forward. Right? It's like marriage. Right? It's not perfect all the time, but if you work hard at it, you can make it wonderfully successful. Right? So from our perspective, going back to the commercialization perspective, we talk about risk. So beta in the finance world is risk. So all our life is driven around what are the risks associated with moving this forward and commercializing. So if we can move forward again to the next slide. Here we go. So there's two parts to it. When we're commercializing opportunities from academia, which is different to commercializing, slightly different to commercializing things from the private sector, there's kind of two broad options. One is the IP already exists. So academia has basically delivered us a box with a bow around it because you've done the IP, it all works, and all we're doing is basically, in many ways, almost buying that IP from you or taking it, and then we don't have any more involvement with the university. Oh my gosh, that one's so good. It's easy. I don't have to deal with any of you. I buy it, I move on, I do what I like with it. I bought the IP. The reality is that's a very, very small number of cases. So the likelihood that you just deliver me a product and it's a one-off experience, I shake your hand and I say, thank you very much for your hard work, here's the money, and then I walk away with it. That's a very, very small number of times that happens. Really what it comes down to is I'm not buying a one-off product. I'm buying a relationship. I'm buying the need to have to work with a group of people for a period of time, maybe for 10 years, maybe longer, to commercialize something to be successful. So the reality is that the universities are delivering me a relationship opportunity, and my job is to make sure that ongoing relationship works, right? And academia, with universities, on unique challenges to that, which I will go through. But basically, the top one is once I've done my due diligence, as it's called, there's no ongoing relationship, and I walk away, and it's very easy for me. The second one is I have to be I need to have collaborative development. I need for an ongoing relationship, potentially over multiple years. And so, really, the next bit of what I'm going to say is all around how do we give ourselves the best chance to make sure that that bottom box works. Right? So if we can flick to the next slide. Right, here we go. The uniqueness of dealing with academia. Okay. So we talked about earlier, you know, that there were three phases or three models which are basically used around the world for commercialization. You know, we used Cambridge example as a thing. So when someone like SUVO or when Hugh Thomas individual knows that they're going to have to get involved with academia to move forward, there are three levels that I actually have to deal with. Not one, but three. The first one is I called it the architect. That's probably not the best word. But someone in here has come up with a clever idea. Someone's come up with geopolymer cement. Someone's come up with new vaccines. Someone's come up with a new IT application. Someone's come up with something clever and new, and I need to have a relationship with that person. So correct me if I'm wrong or I'm embarrassing you, Buyani, but you know, you're geopolymer. So we want a relationship with you as the geopolymer person. But then it comes with a team. So I've now got a new dynamic that I have to manage as a commercialization person. I'm not just dealing with you as an individual, or you, I'm dealing with the collective. And as soon as I've got a team, oh my gosh, it multiplies. It's almost exponentially difficult because I've now got different personalities I have to satisfy. I've got different HR issues that pop up. I've got different motivations. I've got people who want to be the academic researchers striving for perfection and they're not worried about money. And then I've got other academics who turn around and start buying brochures on new cars and new houses because they think they're going to get rich. And I've got to manage all of that stuff, right? And so that's it. And then I get, with all due respect to the administrators in here, in many ways, the worst of the worst. I've got to deal with the university. Sorry, but I've got to deal with the university. So not only I've got the clever person at the top and I've got the emotional buy-in, I've built that relationship. That's fantastic. I've now met the team and I think, yeah, you know, and I'll use Puck Martin, Prof. Anders, I'll call you Puck Martin Bugger. So I've met Martin's team. He knows this, so I can say it. And if any of them are listening, you can work it out yourself. There's a normal distribution of human behavior in there. There's guys in there I know are going to be great, and there's guys in there I know we're going to have to manage more than some of the others. That's just natural. When you get a group of people in a room, there's that distribution, and I know how to. And we've had these conversations because why? Because I believe that the way to success is through collaborative effort. So I know I've got to manage some people more than others. You know, because I'm old, I can joke about with the millennials. I know I've got to hug them on a much more frequent basis than someone who's older who I can say, come on, get real, you know. You can't do that with a lot of your Western, particularly younger generation. I have to hug them and hold them and say, it's all going to be okay and we'll look after you. So we've got to manage and balance up these things. So any millennials listening on the webcast, please don't be like that because it's just too much hard work. And then, as I said, we have to deal with the university. Now, remember, the university's motivation is different to the architect's motivation. The architects come up with a clever idea and they either want to perfect that idea, so they need money, or they want to commercialize that idea for their own personal gain. Both are fully legitimate models. Right? To do that, they generally have to bring a team with them because they know who they need to help them do it. You know, you need your PhD students or your master students, but their motivation quite often can be different to the university's motivation. And this is why I even mentioned at the beginning, an academic and a university are already in conflict on day one, and they have to work that out. So what's the university's cut? What's the university delivering to me? Generally, it's bureaucracy, it's forms that I have to fill in, it's government policy that I have to navigate. Oh my God, it drives me nuts. And I'm doing this just because at the end of the day, I've got what I need at the top of the knowledge and I've got the money, but oh my God, I've got to jump through all these hoops. So my message to the universities is make my life easy. Right? And how do you make it easy? Let's sit down and talk. Let's work this out at the beginning of the process. Some innovations don't make any money and you lose your money, right? Hopefully that doesn't happen very often. Some make an absolute fortune. So all of a sudden, the university sees some academic now being flown around the world, living a good lifestyle, and the university goes, well, wait a minute, where's our bit? Why aren't I getting some of that? Or why did I get it so wrong in the early negotiation? And I'll go, but wait a minute, we've got a contract that says you get this and they get that. Oh no, but now that person's got a better life or doing this. It's a nightmare for us, right? Now, that doesn't discourage us from doing it. I'm here and I want to have a relationship. I've got a relationship with Murdoch. I potentially want a relationship with ITS. But the university, let's be very conscious of the fact that we need to work out how to work successfully together. Because the sad reality is, other than the model that I put up before about Cambridge University or about the Cambridge cluster and some of those larger, wealthier institutions like MIT and Stanford, the vast majority of IP commercializations I have done, and it is a large number both in Indonesia and overseas, and a lot of them have been done with universities. My biggest, the irony is the vast majority of what I've done is I've met the individual first. I haven't met the university. So Martin, I met first. I had met lots of meetings with him before I ever met Murdoch University. Huh? Martin introduced me to Bayuaji. So I met Bayuaji the day that I came out was the first time I met her, and I met the rest of ITS because mostly you'd taken it seriously and there was a group of people there. But at the end of the day, it's come through personal relationship. So the conflict that happens is basically the primary relationship I formed is the one with the person who's got the focus and the drive and come and spoken to me, right? The universities are very bad at going marketing IP. The vast majority of them come because one of the academics has spoken at a conference and I've heard about it and I go, wow, that's interesting. How do I get to meet that person? And do you know what? I go, I don't want to meet MIT. I don't want to meet Stanford. I don't want to meet Cambridge. I don't want to meet Murdoch University. I don't want to meet ITS. Who do I want to meet? I want to meet the person. Because at the end of the day, it's a personal relationship. So what we need to do to make the university one is we need to make sure that relationship becomes personal as well, and not this amorphous bureaucracy that I have to deal with as part of a commercialization process. Because more of the ones have failed that I've been involved in because of the university than ever because of me dealing with the person or the team. The university either doesn't get it, doesn't want to allow the academic the freedom. So here's an interesting thing, and I'm sure this will be the case to ITS. So if it's not, someone stand up and apologize straight away, and I'll apologize straight away. But most universities restrict the amount of work an academic can do on commercialization of ideas. Most universities restrict it, right? And they restrict it because they say to the academic, oh, you've got to produce your 5 research papers and you've got to do this many lecturing hours and blah, blah, blah. And yet, the people in those roles are clever people. They're professors, they're doctorates, they're intelligent human beings. So if you went back to that first slide, which had box number 1, Cambridge University places absolutely no restrictions on academics' ability to do commercial activity. Absolutely no restrictions. And do you know what? Their research says they produce more papers, they're more involved with their students, so they do not restrict or encumber their academics. Now that's breakthrough stuff, because universities around the world, even the prestigious universities in Australia, so like Melbourne University, which has now just been ranked number 12 in the world, which is a phenomenal achievement, principally around the quality of their research, still restricts their academics on how much time they can spend outside what would be called traditional academia. Face-to-face hours lecturing, writing the research papers, giving a paper here or there. Now, I'm not advocating that that model should change immediately, but I'm advocating that as the world moves forward and that relationship between academia and the commercial world moves forward, that is a policy discussion that needs to be had at every university around the world. How do we make sure? Oh, 15 minutes. Okay. I knew this would happen. So the breakthrough question there is how do we do that? Okay. So let's flick on to the next slide then. I can wrap this up pretty quickly, and I'd rather have a lot of questions than things. So next slide. Okay. I've deliberately referenced some academic papers here, so if I could go through this slide quickly. If you get interested, read this paper. It's an absolute cracker on what I would call, right? I've probably covered this in many ways. This was me starting to try and summarize what's so important. academic engagement, and I've stolen it from a paper, can be defined as a knowledge-related collaboration between academic research with non-academic organisations, right? So this all comes down to that human element again. How can I make sure that the academic community is engaged on what they're trying to do, aligned with my interests as well as their interests? Okay. So covering it from my perspective, reading the last sentence of the quote, when collaborating with the best academic researchers, firms, as in the corporate world, need to take into account that these academics will, under most circumstances, only work with them if there was also some academic benefit derived. So there was a lot of research done that said the best relationships between academia and the private sector allowed those academics to continue their research, to continue their academic lifestyle. So when I pair that with the comment I just made earlier on the first slide about universities wanting to restrict academic availability of time for commercialization and other aspects, the smart money, the smart companies that you want to get involved with commercialization will understand that the whole reason you're in academia is the fact that you do get your joy out of that path. That's the path that you went down, whether that was, the reason you're in academia today is because you choose to be in it. Yep. So I've got to reflect that that's your driver, that's your motivator. You want to continue to do your research, which is why Cambridge and other empirical studies around models on restricting academic work in commercialization has actually shown that if you get the right partners, universities, you don't have to stress. You'll get your research papers. You'll get better quality research coming out because we understand the need for the academics to continue to do that work. So with geopolymer and with SUVO, we're having discussions around commercialization of a first concept. But don't get me wrong, all of the people we've discussed with, and in fact I'll use some information that it came out with Bayuaji and Martin yesterday, is when we talked about commercialization of the geopolymer cement, we didn't talk about the first product. We were globally dominating the world. We had book 2 written, book 3 written, book 4 written on the application of geopolymer cement. And guess what? That's very important because the questions we were asking from a commercialization perspective is what's the next product? What's the next way we can use this? So if I'm very, very simple, all of you buy washing powder to clean your clothes. Actually, it's Indonesia, so a lot of you, your helpers will do that for you. But you've got your washing powder, and have you ever noticed that you'll go and buy the simple Procter & Gamble product, and then a year or two later, it'll be the new one, and it's got enzyme in it or something. And then the next one's got extra fabric softener, and the next one's got this and this. So they're taking that product and they're building it up to extend its life. The analogy that I would draw when I'm using geopolymer cement is we've got product A, which we can see is the simplest to commercialize, but it's not the end game. The end game is book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5. And the bottom line is we don't have the answers yet for how to do book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5. So why do I want the relationship with academia? Because I want book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5. That's what this is about. It's developing that relationship. So when SUVO or any other enlightened commercial organization gets involved with academia, it's not about the one-off. It's about developing that relationship to get the next book, the next book, the next book. And in fact, when we started the conversation, we started talking about chapters, and I'm going, no, it's not chapters in a book. It's a whole new book. It's like Harry Potter, right? You read book 1, it's got lots of chapters in, but then we want book 2, and we want book 3, and we want book 4. Yeah. So getting the right relationship when you merge academia and the commercial world together is making sure you're going to write that series of books. And to write that series of books, the commercial world needs to allow academia to do the research, to publish the papers. So, guys, the only thing I ask you to take away as the kind of conclusion from this today, from a theoretical perspective, before I have 7 minutes to go through my final bullet points, is that collaboration, and that from the academic perspective and from the commercial perspective, ultimately are aligned. I don't want you to stop being academics. I want you to research. I want you to write your papers, because if you do that, I get book 2, I get book 3, I get book 4. So administrators, when I said, you know, Cambridge and MIT have discovered that restricting academic behavior doesn't actually help the situation, believe it, because if we have that collaborative relationship where you provide the opportunity to academics to work out that balance themselves, the empirical evidence says from the higher quality universities around the world, it will work. You'll get your research, you'll get your money, you'll get your papers, because it's in my interest as much as it's in your interest. I know I only get Martin half the time from a commercialization, because his mind's off there on other stuff all the time. He wants to go and, you know, dominate the world on something else. So that collaborative understanding becomes very important. Parties need to understand each other's goals, but we can't restrict the way in which we achieve those goals, in my view. So if we go to I think it's the very last slide from memory. Right. So there's a lot on this slide, and everyone will tell you in presentations you shouldn't put a lot of notes on the slide. This is just me saying, when I'm talking to people, when I'm looking for commercialization partners, what do I look for? And to be candid, this was probably the hardest slide I've done, because I've never had to sit down and go, what is it I really do look for? I just go out there and I talk to people, and it either feels right or wrong to me. And then you actually have to try and write that down and distill that. It's actually quite difficult. But, you know, obviously I want to draw on the right minds. I want to find things. So Martin was kind enough to say, hey, wow, there's these guys at ITS. You should go and have a talk to. What am I doing? I'm drawing on the right minds. So I've got someone who's an expert in the profession, or sorry, not in the profession, that's my world, in academia, saying, hey, meet some other academics who are really good at this stuff as well. I'm drawing on the right minds, right? The other thing that's important to me is I'm garnering ideas from all ranks and positions. So guess what? I don't just want to talk to Martin. I want to talk to his team. I want to talk to Jared and Ramon and all the guys he's got there. I've already had the pleasure of, when talking to Bayuaji, to talk to one of her master's students and hopeful PhD student already, to get his ideas as well. It's not just about talking to the architect, it's about talking to that team. I want the ideas from them. So when you're a junior and you're in that meeting, and you think you've got something clever to say, please speak up. I know culturally it's very difficult sometimes, but be brave and speak up, because from a commercialization world, I want everyone having their say, because you might just have the clever thought that none of the rest of us have come up with. Evidence of encouraging and enabling collaboration. Well, people who've come to me have already demonstrated that. Right? If I go to university, they go, oh, we'll introduce you to so-and-so. But those academics who've shown the drive and shown the attitude to want to actually act on what they're doing, I already know I've got that. I've already got evidence of them wanting to be involved in something. So they're people I like immediately and straight away. Openness to diverse perspectives, right? You've got to sit in a room and not just be that channeled to say things. This goes back to almost that argument about academic perfection versus commercialization. We've got to have that diverse sense of perspectives to make it work. Ability to articulate process and bring function out. Now, one of the troubles that we have with the academic world, and the academic world has with commercialization, is we don't speak the same language, right? And I've had a laugh straight away from Martin, right? So that ability to articulate process and map out phases of creativity become very, very important. because we do think differently. Our training makes us think differently. And it's very hard sometimes to get an academic to say, no, I need you to talk about this little box, not all of this. I'll go back and joke about my father. He can't say yes or no to me. It's always, yes, Hugh, but you have to understand. No, I just need a yes or no answer. But if we did this, no. Does it work or doesn't it work? Well, under these circumstances, no, Dad, tell me yes or no. And I've personalized that because and I'm very lucky. My father's turns 93 in a week and he's still alive and very healthy, still got a great mind. But I know when I go and see him in 2 weeks' time, I won't get a yes or no on the whole day that I spend with him. It'll always turn into something else. Academia, I love it. So that ability to narrow it down, to talk about a phase or a part of a process, academics find difficult, right? But from our perspective, it's what it's all about. How do I define this bit? How do I define this bit? How do I do that? So building that relationship becomes very important. Right. I'll have the joke on academia's ability to assist with the path through bureaucracy. Oh my God. If I'm dealing with academics who know how to help me with the bureaucratic system of the university, that's a godsend to me. So, anyway, what I want to do is continue to fan the flames of motivation and creativity. This goes back to my argument. I don't want to restrict academic research. I don't want to restrict innovation just because I'm trying to commercialize one idea, because it's never about the one story, it's about the books, right? Obviously, we want to create an environment that provides that intellectual challenge. Otherwise, you're academics. You like to go and explore. You like to have your views. You like to go and explore. So the last thing I want to do is try and restrict that. I have to cultivate it and make sure you do work on the bit that I'm interested in, but I don't want to destroy the larger creativity. Allow people to pursue their passions, right? So it's not just about the one thing you do in your life. You've got to have those alternative interests. You've got to be sensible about it. You've got to be an appreciative audience, right? And what I mean by that is when you get a group of academics in the room and, as I said, I can pick 3 professors down here who won't be able to give me the same answer when I say what's the best geopolymer formula. I have to be an appreciative audience. I have to have that patience, which is not easy for me. I assure I'm not a patient man. I have to have that patience to hear each of them out. Even if I've already know what the answer is, you've got to learn those skills of being an appreciative audience. Martin will assure you I haven't learnt that skill fully. I'm not good at it, I confess. And then you've got to embrace, and this is a very important one for the undergraduates and the postgraduates sitting back, you've really got to embrace the certainty of failure, right? It never works perfectly, let me tell you. I could tell you stories where I've invested enormous amounts of money in something, only for 6 months in, the whole opportunity to disappear. And it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now to solve this situation? Now, I've got 2 choices. I can curl up in fetal position and cry, or I can try and become creative and find a solution. If we had the time, I could share some stories about that where I have been involved in businesses where we've made significant hundreds of $millions investment, and just because of a technology change or a competitor knowing we were about to do it, that opportunity's disappeared and we had to go down a different path. So embracing your failure is important. The best people on this planet have won and have lost, and they've won and they've lost, but each time they've got better at having the odds of winning. But until you've had failure, it's very very difficult to understand how the real world works. And I assure you, through my life, I've been very, very lucky. And inshallah, I'll continue to be. But I've had my failures where I've had to sit back, reflect on life, brush myself off and go, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? How can I learn from that? What's the better path for me to go down? Hopefully what I've done today, so that kind of finishes the formal slides. I hope today what I've done is just made you sit back and think, right? I didn't come here with solutions, because there is no one definitive solution to commercialization, other than perhaps the message of pick your parties carefully, get involved with the right people, make sure that fit works. So what I hope I've done, whether you're the undergraduate here, the administrator here, or a lecturer here, is just make you have a realization for how, I guess, the commercialization side of the fence thinks, right? Right? We need to make sure, I think the best slide there is the one where I've got, you know, the ones with the goals, and, you know, the goals are different. How do we make sure we find that common ground and work together successfully? I've been so brave as to put my phone number there, WhatsApp, WeChat number. I am one of those people that if you do WhatsApp me, if you do WeChat me, or you do email me or write me, I will write back, right? So even if it's to say, give me 3 days, that's an interesting question, I'll get back to you. So I'm being brave enough to put that up there. So please, if you don't want to put your hand up today, but you've got a question, please don't be shy, because I will write back to you. I will get back to you. I will give you a view on what I've said today. What have I got? 1 minute, 2 minutes? That means the questions. The great thing is that means the questions can't be too difficult because we haven't got any time. So I've used my time up. I apologize for speaking non-stop. Actually, I don't. It's just me. So, but I'm not sure if there's a break now or whatever. But please, if there are questions, ask them now, or I'll hang around for a little while afterwards. I do have to go and get a plane, unfortunately, but and go to Jakarta. But if there are questions, grab me, and I'll be more than happy to try and answer them in the best possible way I can. All right. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I will take one question from the audience.
Oh, am I getting questions? I just think I'll put it back
Just
on.
one question, because the time is very limited.
And please, Aaron, don't be from you. No, I answered it all too well. Oh, please.
Okay.
Thank you very much for very interesting questions and explanation. Yeah. But it requires the academic guide and outside.
Yep.
But I have one question about how to make and how to time frame trees. Because sometimes commercial guide has
Of course. Yeah.
but at the side the technique, where can we need the perfect feelings and show to make a very good product to the world.
Yep.
How would you be the time frame?
Yeah. No. So that is a great question. I don't have control of the slide, so I'll just do it off the top of my head. So there's two parts to my answer. The first is very simple. It's about everyone sitting in the room and working out the priorities and how we get things done. But you are right that finance people are very impatient, right? So it's always about time is money. You're absolutely right. And as I said, it's also about choice. If I think it's going to be too hard, even if I think that's the best idea, but it's too hard, I'll go to the second best idea if it's easier, right? Because it's about making a return on my funds. Having said that, the need for meeting standards, the need for making sure that in a commercialization process, the product that I'm distributing to the marketplace meets a standard is imperative, especially on a new venture, right? You can't afford to let a new venture have a substandard product as its first thing. Years ago, we used to joke about Microsoft. You'd never buy version 1. You'd wait till 1.3 came or 1.4 because all the bugs were gone. So the IT industry was very bad about releasing really beta models, but people had no choice. So if I'm doing something where there's choice, if I'm making cement where people can go and buy traditional cement or buy my cement or our cement, is I've got to make sure that product works perfectly when I release it to the market. So we are aligned, but where we would probably look at it would be, we'll build a demonstration plant, we'll then make a whole lot of this product. So we don't mind that it's 95% perfect from an academic perspective, because what we'll be doing is once we've built that plant is we'll deliberately crush it, break it, and things to make sure it meets a international standard or a building standard or whatever for the cement. And we understand if we're a good partner that it may not work. right? So we understand when we put money into things that there's risk
PKI itu
of
apa
failure.
aja?
Yeah,
Ya.
there's risk that we might never get our money back, right? So the conversations have to be had around not about
Teknologi itu
the
apa?
time frame for that particular part of the process you're talking about, but what's the time frame of the whole? Because we might say to you, sorry, you do need to go a little faster here, because from a risk perspective, we think we're going to cover it over here. And that just comes down to that ability of us to sit in a room together and have that quality of conversation, and not just be restricted to the micro of that particular point. Because when I produce cement, if I don't produce it to a standard, it doesn't work when you know we've got the minister standing there next to the product we've made. We will fail immediately. So our interests are aligned. It's just where are we recognizing that risk? Where are we recognizing that time frame to be able to make sure we've got success? So yes, we'll ask you to go faster at times, but at other times we'll probably ask you to go slower. Once that plant's up and running and we want to make sure it works, we'll be going, no, don't, we actually want to slow down and do this again. We want to make 1,000 more before we've got that evidence to say that we're comfortable with it. Because launching new products, if you don't get it right, when you first launch it, you'll never recover. It's so hard to come back and say, oh, sorry, we got it wrong. Here's version 2. Everyone's moved on from there. So yeah, I hope that answers it.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Pleasure.
I will summarize the lecture today, but it's given it can light up the importance of taking commercialization in our research. I believe that the changes of government policy and research already in line with the lecture given by this today. Even in ICS, I think since 2019, our rector already stated that it is important that the research is not just for paper, but also for prototype, for product, and also solving real problems in the society. Untuk mahasiswa-mahasiswa kita yang sedang terapan dan masih terapan ya, hari ini saya kira luar biasa sekali ya, kuliah yang diberikan oleh Sigit ya. We just not thinking about research, but also thinking about money, the importance of money. Yeah, we talk about money. Yeah, I think this is the thing to use. We will look at the second lecture. It will be moderated by Profesor Ridho Bayuaji.
I'm sure that. Yeah. Baik, Bapak Ibu, kita melanjutkan ke sesi yang kedua. Sesi yang kedua ini nanti akan disampaikan oleh Asosiasi Profesor Andri Kusbiantoro Ph.D. ya. Jadi apa namanya? Kami undang Pak Andri Sigit masuk ini. Okay, thank you. Next session
Second session, I will introduce for the Pak Andri. Oke, Pak Andri, Associate Profesor Andri Kusbiantoro, Ph.D, Lecturer of Civil Engineering and Technology, Faculty of Engineering Technology, University Hussein, Malaysia, UTHM. And the title of presentation is Advancement of Concrete as a Building Material. Jadi Bapak Ibu, ini Mas Andri ini adalah teman Ph.D ya, teman S3 saya waktu di Universitas Petronas, sama-sama alumni Petronas Malaysia. Alhamdulillah, hari ini kami nanti kita semua akan banyak belajar dengan Pak Andri. Jadi belajar itu tidak ada selesainya, dan seperti materi sebelumnya itu sangat penting sekali bahwa vokasi itu tidak hanya memikirkan akademik, tetapi bagaimana kita berpikir untuk bisa maju lagi paradigmanya untuk bisa bersinergi dengan bidang komersialisasi. Ya, jadi dengan komersialisasi itu, jadi kita tidak hanya berpikir akademiknya, tapi bagaimana ilmu adik-adik semua ini bisa dimanfaatkan. Oke, next. Waktu saya berikan ke Pak Andri untuk bisa presentasi. Silakan.
Right, so Assalamualaikum and very good. Thank you everyone. I'm totally different from Profesi just now. I have to use mic because I have a sore throat. I cannot speak that loud. Setiap kali diundang untuk acara di DTIS mesti bingung. Ngomongnya bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Inggris? Soalnya saya alumni dari Sipil ITS, kata di 44. Jadi tapi karena kita ada tamu internasional dari sini, Mr. Martin and then Mr. Hugh, I think I have to speak in English and then to make the environment a bit more international. But in any time you have any questions, just stop me at any time, raise your questions. Boleh bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia, dalam bahasa Jawa saya paham, totally paham. Bahasa Inggris juga boleh. Dan semoga saya bisa menjawab pertanyaan yang diajukan oleh bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu, dan juga adik-adik sekalian. Oke, nama saya Andri Kusbiantoro, panggil saja Andri. From Universiti to Malaysia, from the Departemen of Civil Engineering Technology, Faculty of Engineering Technology. Kalau di Malaysia, Fakulty of Vokasi adalah Faculty of Engineering Technology. Jadi DNA kita sama. We share the same DNA. But even though I came from the engineering, but I spent like half of my career in the engineering technology. Right, the title of my slides today is the advancement of concrete as a building materials. So after you listen to the very interesting perspectives from the business mind side, same like I think your lecturer in ITS, also me as a lecturer in DTIS, we are always requested to get commercialized. But at the same time, we as a lecturer also need to mark your assignment, quiz, UTS, OAS, right, all the exam, and then we have to prepare for the accreditations. We have to prepare for any visit from the ministry, and so many things. So everything actually your lecturer in here is not only a lecturer. They are also the admin. They are also the technical staff. They came to the lab. They also the lecturer. They also the businessman. After receiving the Hugh presentation just now, right? But in here, I will talk since the audience mostly came from the undergraduate student. I will talk hopefully pretty straightforward. Right, pretty straightforward. If let's say the slide is too fast, let me know. Right. So talking about concrete, we see it in every aspect of our life, from the airport, from the bridge, from the house, until the breakwater. Concrete is like a very demanded material. They said the consumption of concrete is only second to the water. Right? It's most consumed materials in the world. That is why there are reasons why people using concrete, because first, cement is quite cheap. Right? In Malaysia, in Indonesia, the price of the cement is quite cheap, except for in Jayapura. The price of cement can go up to like 1 million, if I'm not mistaken. This is totally high for our level, even for our level. Right. So why people is using concrete? There are advantages and there are disadvantages. I will talk from the advantages first. Concrete is cheap. You can go to any hardware shop, toko bangunan, you purchase the cement, you purchase the aggregate, get the water from your DTIS, and then you can mix concrete, as easy as that. It's not different from steel. In steel, you have to pick your phone, call the supplier, I need this white flake steel profile, 6 meters. So because of the convenience in concrete, people always tend to opt for concrete as the main building material. Right. The second advantage, concrete is not prone to the corrosion. Means you can cast concrete and leave it. The easiest way is to imagine is like that. You put cast and leave it. It means the concrete can stand maybe up to 10 years, 20 years, except for concrete in a harsh environment, it will only last up to maybe 15 years if you don't do the maintenance properly. Right. Next, easy on the maintenance, correct? You don't have to paint the concrete to make sure the concrete is free from the corrosion, because the concrete itself doesn't have any iron except for the steel bar, and then it's totally high in durability. That's why when you design concrete, ada desain struktur beton bertulang, kan? You have to pick the service life of the concrete building. For example, 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. That's the durability of the concrete. All right? And easy to be modified. You want to produce concrete with the shape of me, for example. As long as you have the mold, you can produce it. And then if you want to produce a concrete with the shape of beam, a small beam, rectangular beam, circular beam, right? You can produce concrete as long as you have the mold, you can produce and shape the concrete as you want. Right. Now, what about disadvantage? It's a brittle material. Concrete is a brittle material, right? And because of this characteristic, it must be reinforced with a ductile material. Because why? The brittle material, even though it's strong in compression, is very weak in tension. Right. The easiest way is like this: if the concrete, if this hall has a beam, right? It is always reinforced with a steel reinforcement, because the concrete itself is a brittle material. And then normally concrete is large in dimensions. If let's say you build a column, kalau kalian pergi ke Tunjungan Plaza, if you go to the mall, right, you can see next time when you go to the mall, do not just go to the Uniqlo, H&M, or maybe what you call it? What's the one that's selling the tea? I forgot the time selling the jasmine tea. Japai, Hilai, don't go to that one. When you go to the mall, Galaxy Mall or Tunjungan Plaza, pay attention to the size of the column. Pay attention to the size of the beam. Right, you can see, oh, it's very huge. Only that you can imagine, oh, actually to sustain such a heavy load, the size can be very huge. Nanti ada tugas besar kan? Nah, dari situ nanti tahu bahwa size konkret cannot be made similar to the size of the column for the house. Right, it's totally different. That's why large in dimension. And it's not environmentally friendly. Why it's not environmentally friendly? Because of this. The cement manufacturing. This is one example of cement manufacturing using the dry method. The dry method. There are three components, the three stages that are, you can say it's not environmentally friendly. Kenapa? For example, the cement must be produced using limestone and shale or clay. Now, siapa yang rumahnya dari Gresik? Mesti tahu. Right. If you go to Gresik, let's say 10 years ago, you always play around near the cement factory. Now, when you go back to the cement factory, the limestone mountain already gone. Right. Because what? The cement factory cannot regrow the limestone. So the resources will keep depleting until totally finished. Okay. Now, sorry. Right. The next stage is during the calcination. The calcination atau proses pembakaran requiring a very high temperature. It can go up to 1,600 degrees Celsius. When you burn calcium carbonate from the limestone, it can be CaO, calcium oxide, plus CO2, carbon dioxide. Now, those carbon dioxide will be released to the atmosphere. That's why this process, if you keep doing it, we have accumulation of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere eventually. Last one is about all the process itself. The production, the transportations, it requires fuel. When you burn fuel, you will get something like what happened in Jakarta right now. Right, the pollution is quite heavy. It's not healthy anymore. Right, so all these factors will contribute to the non-environmentally feature of the cement itself. That's why when you are designing concrete, when you want to decide, oh saya mau pakai concrete untuk bangunan saya, people will always put concern about the sustainability. Sustainability of the human resource, sustainability of the raw resources, raw material, sustainability of the health quality of the people itself, and other sustainability that you can get from the 19 SDG. Masih ingat SDG apa? Sustainability Development Goal. Right. So all these factors will contribute to this mindset. Now, people dealing with concrete, the academia, right? The academia, this is not started now. This is already started years ago, maybe decades ago. Puluhan tahun yang lalu. Right. So the coal-fired power plant, let's say, if you go to Python, right, the coal-fired power plant, they produce a waste. The waste is called as a fly ash. Now, fly ash is a very prominent material. It's very famous. Because why? The fly ash itself is quite pozzolanic. Right, that's why now the cement factory, they want to go green. If you go to any hardware, toko bangunan, you will no longer be able to find ordinary Poland cement atau cement type 1. Because why? This one related to this process. This is the basic process to produce OPC type 1. Now they want to go green. They want to reduce the burning of raw materials over here. By what? By using fly ash. So clinker from the cement factory will be mixed with fly ash, will be mixed with ground granulated blast furnace slag, will be mixed with another components that is quite pozzolanic. Right, that's why when you go to toko bangunan, you will find Poland cement composite. This one not OPC. The strength will be quite different. But the PCC has a better environmentally environmentally friendly feature than the OPC. It's a greener. You can say it's a greener. Right. Next is silica fume. This one is quite famous, very famous until the industry itself recognizing the value and start to sell it to the cement factory. Right, this is silica fume. The silica in here can go up to like 98%, 97%, quite high. And the one that quite famous but nearly forgotten is the rice husk ash, right? Or we call it RHA. So the rice husk ash actually has a silica up to 95%, can go up to 96 if you do the treatment properly. So all these three, right? All these three materials and other examples, for example, like a palm oil fuel ash, sugarcane bagasse ash, all those ashes from the organic, including the slag, they become the pozzolanic material, or famous as the cement replacement materials. Right. So what is the role of cement replacement material in here? Cement, kalau dicampur dengan air, akan mengalami cement hydration process. That's the reactions. Hydration, cement hydrations. The hydration process will produce calcium silicate hydrate. This is the main support for the concrete. Right. Now, other than calcium silicate hydrate, the cement hydration also produce calcium hydrate. Calcium hydrate ini tidak diperlukan. You can say tidak diperlukan. It's not as significant as calcium silicate hydrate, but you cannot avoid it. Dia akan diproduksi juga. Now, what if you can convert this calcium silicate hydrate into secondary calcium silicate hydrate by including what? By including silica in the middle of it. So this silica inilah yang datang dari fly ash, datang dari silica fume, datang dari rice husk ash. So all this will contribute to the secondary calcium silicate hydrate. So from here, people can build from like a 1, 2, 3, 4 stories, 4 stories building into the Burj Khalifa, for example. Right. Okay, this is like if you go deeper into the microstructure of the cement, this is what we call as the calcium silicate hydrate. Meskipun seperti ini, tapi actually very strong. It's like a net, but the net itself is very strong. And then this is the like a significant outcome of using pozzolan or cement replacement material. We want to fill the gap between the aggregate and the cement paste. If let's say the silica, because the silica is quite fine, agak halus, agak kecil, so it can go and stay inside the interfacial transition zone, and when the time is right, it can react with calcium hydrate and produce calcium silicate hydrate to connect the aggregate and the cement paste. Right, that's why the strength can go higher. So what are the example? Contohnya, the KLCC. The KLCC is using like a high volume fly ash, right? HVFA. I think in Kampus Manyar, also in Sukolilo, is currently studying using the high volume fly ash in the concrete proportions. So this KLCC, for example, they are using what they call as a mascrete. Mascrete is consisting of 80% OPC plus 20% fly ash, right? And then they add with silica fume to produce which grade of concrete? 80 megapascal. So now, let's say for house, you only need 20 megapascal. To build a bridge, maybe you need 40 megapascal. Now, to build KLCC, or maybe the second KLCC in next to Kampus Manyar, then you need maybe around 80 megapascal. Same goes to the Burj Khalifa. The grade, the highest grade, I'm talking about the highest grade. The top maybe is about 40 megapascal. But the highest grade at the bottom is 80 megapascal. Same goes with the proportions. It has cement, it has fly ash, and it has silica fume. And the water cement ratio is quite low. That's why I think they have it, they include the super plasticizer as well in this concrete. Okay. Right, so what is next? We have talked about the cement replacement materials. Kita dah sudah berbicara tentang fly ash, high volume fly ash. Kita sudah tahu tentang rice husk ash dan juga silica fume. What is next? What is the next that I say advancement of concrete? Bukan tadi itu sudah advance ke Pak? Bukan. This one you can say now is already basic. Everyone must doing it because the cement factory already doing it. That PCC is a combination of clinker plus fly ash. Clinker plus slag. That's why you have PCC. Now, actually, you are forced to do it until it becomes a habit. Once it becomes a habit, then it's already ordinary. So what is next? We have this one, advanced concrete. I just show you the example of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 example of advanced concrete in our field. So maybe next year, next 2 years, right? Next 3 years, you will invent another advanced concrete that will be included in this list. Saya akan mulai dengan self compacting concrete. Right. The idea of using SCC atau self compacting concrete is because the requirement of a building is no longer 4 stories, 10 stories. Now it's already minimum 20 stories, 30 stories. And people, even country is competing to build the tallest skyscraper in the world. Right. When you go to that level, the reinforcement is no longer ordinary. The reinforcement become very dense. Right. When you're not designing the concrete properly, the concrete will get stuck in the middle. Right. What is the consequences? Your rebar can get exposed, or your concrete can be quite porous. So you have to make sure the concrete can flow filling into the rebar, this rebar jungle. Right. This normal concrete, you can just put the, what we call it, vibrator, poker vibrator, just to make sure all the concrete will flow into each part of the formwork, right, of the formwork. But for this jungle of rebar, it will be too difficult. In this way, you have to use SCC. Right. This is one example of SCC. You don't have to compact the SCC. So the SCC itself will compact by its own, consolidate by its own, right, and filling all the voids inside the formwork, even between the rebar. Right. What about the components? The components is similar. You still need cement, maybe grade 43 or 53. And then you still need to have the aggregate, but not too big. Maximum is about 20 millimeter. And you still need water. What kind of water? The potable one. All the water that you can drink is safe enough for the concrete. And admixture. The admixture is the one that make the SCC different from ordinary concrete, the normal concrete. So the SCC in here has two normally, the chemical and mineral. Mineral admixture is needed to achieve the higher strength. Right. The chemical admixture is needed to increase the flowability of the concrete. Right. So what is the pro and cons in here? Pro, you don't have to use vibrator to compact the concrete. You eliminate the need of it. Right. And you improve the durability because every part of the concrete will be filled with, every part of the structure of the formwork will be filled with concrete. So you can make sure the rebar will not get exposed to the environment. You prevent the corrosion of rebar, the damage of rebar. Right. And then you increase the service life. The cons, you have to increase the use of cement. You have to use super plasticizer, which is not cheap. So it's going to be costly a bit. And you may require tools to transport and pump the concrete from the ground floor to your site. Okay, that concrete pump is quite critical in here. So, gimana sih sebetulnya SP itu bekerja? Right. Karena semen dicampur dengan air, you can produce cement paste. Right. What about SP? SP actually is like a charger, like a charger. You have the cement particles. The cement particles, when you mix with water, it will contain the electric charge, positive and negative. Right. Naturally, the positive will attract to the negative. If all those accumulated, right, it will trap the water inside that cement particles. Now, what happened when you put SP? That flocculation of cement paste will be dispersed by SP through the mechanism of coating. So that SP will coat the cement particles and give, let's say, negative charge. All right. When the cement particles contain both negative charges, it will repel each other. Akan saling, apa kita panggilnya? Repelling. Menolak. Menolak. Akan saling menolak. Kalau semua partikel of cement menolak, air yang ada di dalam flocculation tadi akan terkeluar. Akhirnya konkrit akan lebih workable. That's the function of using super plasticizer in here. Okay, this one next about ultra high performance concrete. This one for me totally is like a magic. This is the normal earth retaining wall. Right. Now people already able to produce ultra high performance concrete using these dimensions. At first I thought, is that a steel plate? Because it's very thin. It's very thin. And then the owner said, no, it's a concrete. I totally amazed when they explain about this product in the first place. Because you can have so many advantages with this kind of concrete, to be honest. Right. So normally we have normal strength concrete from 25 to 60 megapascal. Right. And then you have high performance concrete. The range can go from 65 to 105. This one is the one that used by KLCC and Burj Khalifa engineer. Now, the new one, the latest one, is no longer high performance, but ultra high performance. The density remain the same. So imagine, the density remain the same. Strength is increased up to bifold, up to 2 times. The modulus of elasticity increased up to like 20% higher. Water porosity decreased up to lower than 10%. Imagine the durability. And water absorption after 30 minutes is only 0.5%. So it means if you are using this structure for water retaining structure, it is capable to do it, right? How they make the ultra high performance? Similar, they're still using cement. And then they have fine sand, but they use silica fume. Silica fume, remember the 95% silica inside it? And then the additive plus micro steel fiber. Right. So from here, the owner of the company actually is a PhD student from Australia. Yeah, I forgot the name, the Vincent. So the owner of the company is a PhD student from Australia. He came back from Australia, back to Malaysia. And then in Malaysia, he want to apply his PhD thesis. So next time when you study about concrete during your undergraduate, back to your hometown, you make your own maybe casting yard, who knows, right? So this man, this man thinking, when I propose to the department, to the ministry, they will not believe me. They will afraid. They will afraid to receive my product. Apa yang dia lakukan? Dia bangun pabriknya dengan konkrit yang dia punya. Jadi ini bukan steel. Ini konkrit. So he want to show to the people, ini loh pabrikku bisa berdiri dengan aman, dengan bagian yang begitu tipis, but using my own concrete, and I still can operate within my factory. So maybe the mindset of that has been shared by Mr. Hugh just now is about the business perspective. Selling to other people is about convincing the stakeholders, convincing your customer. Right. So here is like a totally like a steel. I even thinking it was a steel, but no, this is a concrete. Right. This is the earth retaining wall being used for drainage, for culvert. And the latest project, they use it like as a girder for, I think if I'm mistaken, the span is about 105 meter. 105 meter without middle column. One totally a big achievement. Right? I don't know whether you maybe one day you can produce this Dura technology to Surabaya. Right. Saya nggak bisa, saya harus ngajar ke sana. Or maybe anyone in the webinar online just now, currently, bisa berinvest untuk mungkin kampus Manyar dan kampus ITS. This project, oh, totally good. Okay. Okay, right. Okay, totally good. I just totally amazed with the size of the girder. Dia sangat tipis. Ini size-nya bukan ini ya, yang ini. Right. Sangat tipis dan sangat kuat. Now, underwater concreting. Underwater concreting is like a new advanced concrete. Normally, when you are using grouting, nothing special will happen to your concrete when you use the normal grout. Right? You mix your grout material with water, put into the water, it will disperse. As easy as that. So what Sika do, they put a mixture. When you need the cement paste, or maybe you need the concrete for the underwater, it will not disperse. All right, so you don't have to build like a enclosed area for your project. You can totally build a formwork, pour the concrete inside it, and let it setting to harden until the desired strength. This is like the example of underwater concreting, where you can just build a formwork, pour the concrete inside it, don't mind about the water, and then just leave carefully until the formwork is filled. That's how they do it. Masih oke? Sudah ngantuk? Masih oke. Oke. Now pervious concrete. Ini mungkin sudah banyak, sudah viral kan? Sudah viral di sosial media. Kalau di Jakarta dipanggilnya sumur serapan. Now in our field we call it as a pervious concrete. Not from the hole that made specifically for that sumur, but we make the root as a hole itself. Right? Because of what? Because if you look at this picture, we call it as a urban heat island effect. Right? This heat island is happening because all the ground, all the surface has been covered with asphalt, with concrete, with building. There are no longer grass. If rain is coming, it just flow into the drainage, into the river, and finally to the sea. There is no period for the water to seep into the ground and cool down all the environment over there. That's the concept of sumur resapan at the time, right? So this, you can see the temperature near the downtown area compared to the rural area is totally different, right? Because of this concept. Now, what the engineer is trying to do is creating the pervious concrete, right? They make the concrete as a container, right? They make the concrete as a container for the rain, for the rainwater, right? So this asphaltic concrete actually is quite porous, but the water is not going into the concrete. It's passing the concrete. So what they have over here, they have like a pool. Right. So here will be filled with gravel, batu, diisi dengan batu. kemudian ditutup dengan previous concrete. Anytime hujan turun, air nggak akan menggenang. Dia akan turun, masuk ke dalam sini, dalam kolam ini, kemudian dialirkan keluar ke drainase kalau sudah penuh. That's the concept. So kalau mungkin perlu untuk parkiran kampus Manyar nanti Pak, supaya nggak air menggenang untuk proyeknya student ini tahun akhir. Right, now the last one about geopolymer concrete. Where is Mr. Hugh? I have the recipe for him. Yeah, I want to give him the recipe actually. So this is the recipe of geopolymer concrete. When Mr. Hugh said the metakaolin is a super juice, right? Super juice for geopolymer for cement. This is it, because metakaolin is actually a kaolin that is calcined or burned into specific temperature until it produces metakaolin. In here, the 750 actually 750 degrees Celsius, the calcination temperature for 1 hour. Right? It produces, when you mix metakaolin 750 with slag and alkali silicate, you produce geopolymer. And then when it's rock-based geopolymer, you produce with volcanic rocks and mine tailings. Now is the one that very famous, fly ash geopolymer. We don't use the metakaolin, we use fly ash, because fly ash is available in high amount, abundant amount. Right? If we can consume that fly ash, at least we can contribute something to the environment. Right? So this ferrosilate-based geopolymer cement also using metakaolin. So you can see metakaolin is a super juice for geopolymer. Because, and now the Kampus Manyar, I heard from Pak Hussein yesterday, Pak, already able to produce the dry mixture of geopolymer. Saya masih menggunakan wet mix. So Kampus Manyar sudah selangkah di hadapan. Bisa menggunakan dry mix. Saya harus belajar dari Pak. Okay, dry mix. So when you are using dry mix, means you can sell it to the customer as a bag of geopolymer cement. That's what they're doing in Australia. Well, kenapa Australia menjadi suatu benchmark? Because they already built real structure using geopolymer. They have the standard. That's why geopolymer is quite advanced in Australia. You can see the most famous figure, I think, is John Provis, Professor John Provis. So different from calcium silicate hydrate, you can see yang seperti ragi kan, kalau CSH. Di geopolymer seperti nasi. Kita panggil micelles. Micelles in geopolymer. So nasi dengan ragi, dua-dua sama-sama kuat. Right. How to produce geopolymer? You need the chemical. Sodium hydroxide as an accelerator atau activator, and plus sodium silicate. Then alumina silica rich material can be from fly ash, can be from metakaolin. Right. So this is the example of geopolymer concrete real building in the Queensland University and also in the Wellcome Airport in Australia. So when I did my PhD, my professor said I'm the first PhD graduate in geopolymer in Malaysia. At the time, geopolymer here, Australia already built the real structure. This panel of slab, concrete slab, actually built using geopolymer. We trying to convince our government, masih ragu-ragu lagi, right? But I think we have to take the risk, right? Building our own structure, seperti yang dilakukan oleh Dura tadi. He built his own factory using his own material and show to the people, this is what I sell, and this is the outcome, right? And this is Wellcome Airport. If I'm not mistaken, is a one stretch. So this 1, 2, 3, 4. This stretch of pavement was built using geopolymer, and they have the geopolymer cement in Australia, right? Okay, itu saja dari saya. Pretty straightforward. Hopefully nggak mengantuk. Ya.
Thank you very much, Dr. Andri. Maybe one or two questions from Dr. Andri. Jadi, Bapak Ibu atau yang mau caranya atau perlawanan ini mau di oh,
Yes.
Terima kasih. Prof. Andri,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Welcome.
Wonderful presentation. I really
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it. Terima kasih.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was very much enjoyed yesterday learning from Prof. Bayuaji, the work that is happening in Indonesia through the laboratory and also the partnership with Dekan.
Okay.
And very interesting to see the great work that's happening in Indonesia. And now I understand that you have come from Surabaya. You are now a professor in Malaysia.
Yes.
So I'm very interested to understand what are some of the economic developments that you think may be occurring in Malaysia as well. I see any of the industry taking this up, after this project, maybe one day we can do it in Malaysia.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Martin. Please, Dr. Andri.
Okay. Right. Thank you for the question, Prof. Martin. Actually, in Malaysia, we are sharing the same progress with Indonesia. So what we have in Malaysia right now, there are universities that are excel in geopolymer, like UNIMAP, University Malaysia Perlis, and then University Putra Malaysia, University Teknologi Malaysia, University Teknologi Petronas. They are very excel in geopolymer. As for the community, like in Indonesia, we have Korigi, right? We also have My Geopolymer, right? Consortium, right? So we are sharing the same progress with Indonesia. We also meet occasionally in Kuala Lumpur. Regarding the project itself, I haven't seen any real structure made using geopolymer. The farthest that I know, they built a road, like what they call it, prototype road. Right. So they contact the Ministry of Public Work in Malaysia, and then they said, we want to test our material. We want to build this stretch of road using geopolymer. But that geopolymer as a preparing material for soil, not as surfacing materials. So they want to repair the soil inside that area using the geopolymer cement. That's the farthest that I know happening in Malaysia right now. All right, thank you. Sama-sama.
Thank you, Dr. Andri. Okay, next. Question. Oh, yeah, online. Online. Any question? Online maybe.
Boleh pertanyaan dalam bahasa Indonesia juga.
Iya. Kalau yang online mereka yang online. Silakan. Ayo mahasiswa anaknya di belakang kayak dulu.
Hazen.
Terima kasih atas kesempatannya. Kan saya mungkin mahasiswa tentang SUVO. Terima kasih kalau Andri atas pemaparan yang luar biasa. Dan saya akan bertanya kepada Prof. Andri terkait dengan apa yang kalau dipaparkan barusan. Nah, yang menjadi poin pertanyaan saya adalah terkait dengan geopolimer ya. Setelah mereka teknik geopolimer. Nah, yang menjadi pertanyaan saya adalah berdasarkan pengalaman kampanye di dalam melakukan topik yang sudah dilakukan di internasional kita akan seperti apa? Gunakan dua kali. Juga seperti yang dilakukan juga, jadi kita mengembangkan dengan peraturan global. Nah, kalau untuk dua ngomong begini kira-kira yang seperti apa kita gimana? Terima kasih.
Oke, baik. Saya terus jawab, Prof. Ridho. Oke, terima kasih Mas Hasan. Untuk geopolimer, kalau kita menggunakan fly ash, sebab yang di atas menggunakan metakaolin, right? Tapi kalau untuk fly ash, sebab sangat famous di area Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, menggunakan fly ash. Masalah utama dengan fly ash adalah setting time. Setting time-nya kalau kita menggunakan fly ash yang Type C, yang mempunyai konten kalsium di atas 10%, agak tinggi, dia cepat mengeras. Itu masalah yang paling utama, cepat mengeras. Dan kalau semen itu cepat mengeras, 20% cepat mengeras, kita jadi nggak punya waktu untuk mix, nggak punya waktu untuk cast, mencetak, nggak punya waktu untuk membersihkan. Semuanya akan mengeras di dalam mungkin mixer. Nah dulu pernah waktu saya Ph.D, saya coba mencampurkan. Pertama kali belajar geopolimer, saya campurkan dengan slag. Waktu saya masukkan ke wheelbarrow, yang torongan itu, mengeras di situ. Jadi bentuknya masih bentuk wheelbarrow. Saya buang juga gunduk gitu. Gunduk bentuk wheelbarrow. Jadi memang cepat sangat mengeras. Mulai situ coba-coba lagi campur admixture. Jadi masalah utama sebetulnya cepat mengerasnya itu. Kalau kita boleh mungkin extend masalah setting time ini, insya Allah geopolimer boleh dikomersialkan yang lebih lanjut. Yang kedua, durability sebetulnya. Orang masih nggak percaya sebab kalau kita menggunakan semen, semen sudah ada dari zaman dulu. Dari zaman mungkin adik-adik belum lahir orang sudah pakai semen. Tapi geopolimer masih baru. Nggak ada artis-artis atau selebgram atau tiktokers yang mau mengendorse geopolimer. Jadi orang nggak tahu gimana geopolimer ini sebetulnya. Nah, kalau orang tidak diberikan exposure kepada geopolimer, durability-nya akan dipertanyakan. Kalau aku bangun rumah nanti, mesti aku mau pengennya sampai ke anak cucu. Tapi betul lah kalau pakai geopolimer ini akan sampai ke anak cucu atau sampai ke saya aja, dan sampai ke anak. Jadi durability ini yang kita harus mulai buat sekarang. Kalau bisa mulai dari yang kecil buat rumah contoh atau mungkin dari kayak kayak yang ini tadi. Dia harus take action. Harus ada industri yang berani untuk apply. Take action buat slab untuk bangunan universitas. Kemudian strip untuk runway. Kalau memang mungkin bisa dipakai untuk start dari parkiran dulu. Satu strip parkiran boleh menggunakan geopolimer. Kita lihat akan cepat crack ataupun bisa tahan lama. Tapi yang paling penting kita harus aplikasikan dengan segera. Sebab kalau enggak, orang nggak akan tahu, nggak ada buktinya, akhirnya ya cuman berakhir di jurnal, akan berakhir di tesis, orang nggak akan tahu. Sama seperti yang Dura konkret tadi. Kalau dia nggak melihat potensi bisnis di sebalik title PhD dia, topik PhD dia nggak akan balik ke Malaysia buat bisnis. Sampai sekarang proyeknya sudah mungkin bilion-bilion. Nanti bisa pergi ke websitenya Dura Konkret. Jadi kita memang harus berani mengaplikasikan. Kalau enggak, ya kalau kita nunggu yang tadi itu selebgram ya susah juga. Semoga dua itu menjawab ya, Mas Andri. Ada pertanyaan lain? Oke, batas pH ya, batas pH berapa untuk pengecoran dalam air? Sebetulnya untuk konkret ini, konkret adalah basa kan. Konkret itu kandungannya basa. Jadi kalau untuk pH berapa dalam air, selagi konkret itu masih bisa mengeras, masih bisa bereaksi dengan air yang diberikan, insya Allah nggak ada masalah. Kalau batas limitnya, kalau kita masukkan dalam sulfate, kayaknya agak susah juga. Baik, kalau sulfate sebab acidic. Tapi konkrit itu sendiri bukan netral. Jadi konkrit sendiri bukan netral. Konkrit adalah material yang basah. pH-nya tinggi di atas 6. Jadi memang sudah nature-nya konkrit basah. pH berapa ya nggak ada masalah. Selagi bukan acidic. Kalau acidic takutnya ribarnya yang kemakan nanti. Nah, gitu, semoga menjawab. Kalau memang airnya asam ya mungkin bisa dinetralkan gitu. Makanya. Saya jadi dretek ini. Ya. Hmm, correct. Yes. Cost. Okay, all right. I will share my cost. Business. Udah, rahasia perusahaan ini. Oke, kita start dari fly ash. Fly ash bisa dikatakan ada yang free, ada yang harus beli. Nah, kita harus beli. Kalau fly ash yang harus beli, belinya dengan siapa? Contohnya, kalau sekarang sebagai dosen, free. For the sake of research. Atas nama ilmu pengetahuan, kita todong. Bisa nggak ngasih fly ash? Ini mati ya? Oke, Mas, sudah. For the sake of knowledge, kita todong power play-nya, bisa nggak ngasih saya fly ash? Tapi sekarang sudah susah, sebab semua coal fire power plant di Malaysia akan menjual fly ash-nya ke pabrik semen. Jadi nggak bisa lagi kita datang ke power plant, mau ngambil fly ash, nggak bisa. Jadi harus melalui pabrik semen, dikasih. Tapi pabrik semen, untuk program CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility, mereka nggak ada masalah ngasih. Jadi sejauh ini, fly ash saya nggak pernah beli. Kamu itu semen. Oke. Kalau pembelian chemicalnya dalam bulk quantity, iya, iya. Actually, it won't be fair if I say, from my perspective, I'm predicting the price of the fly ash because I never bought the fly ash. I will get for free. But I think if let's say you have to purchase from the cement company, the price will be way cheaper than cement itself. Right. No, actually, I don't know the price for fly ash actually. 25% cheaper of the cement. Okay. I think I have to check with the cement company if they want to sell fly ash. Currently, what I have, if I call the cement company, saya perlukan fly ash, datang berapa? 2 ton, dikasih 2 ton. Yes, as a researcher. Tapi yang boleh saya share mungkin harga sodium silicate and sodium hydroxide. Sodium silicate, last time saya beli Rp2.500 itu untuk sekitar 2.500 kilogram. Iya, Bu. 2,5 ton. 2.500 ringgit atau bentar saya lupa. Satu barrel, one big barrel is about 30 kilogram. And then I purchase about 10 barrels. So 3 ton. Nah, 3 ton harganya 2.500 ringgit. Per 3 ton. Sodium silicate. Chip. Mahal. Jadi ada 2 pabrik yang produce sodium silicate di Malaysia yang besar. Kita tinggal call berapa harganya, dikasih harga itu. Yang mahal sodium hydroxide. Soalnya kalau kita mau beli, saya nggak nemu pabriknya. Itu makanya mahal. Kita beli yang chemical quality, yang vegan quality. 1 kilo 40 ringgit. Sodium silicate. Sodium hydroxide. Oke. Saya nggak nemu, Bu. I didn't find the factory. I think so. Yes. But they produce the sodium silicate in Malaysia.
Yeah. And next, the 2,500 rupiah.
Per kilogram. Oh, cheap, very cheap. So I have like a
Jadi makanya nggak menarik. Itu menarik.
oh, this one very expensive. Yeah, 4 times. Australia 4 times. Oh,
Oh,
and you can request the compositions. I can request normally I want the ratio between silica and sodium. Also can. So last time I had like a rack of barrels of sodium silicate. So on the other side, we use the region quality. So 40 kilogram per kilo. Maybe next time if I find the sodium hydroxide company, I will let you know. So 40 ringgit sekitar 120.000, 130.000 per kilogram. Because it's like a region quality. Saya masih ada satu ekstra, 1 barrel. Tapi 30 kilo, Pak. Kalau bawa naik pesawat AirAsia mungkin
itu ada pertanyaan di sini, Pak. Pertanyaannya, apakah tidak ada riset yang menunjukkan ada pengaruh program IT atau privacy terhadap pengaruhnya?
sekarang ini yang paling kritikal, contohnya kalau climate change ada hujan asam. Hujan asam terkena konkrit, asamnya masuk ke tulangan. Itu yang paling berbahaya. Atau mungkin dia akan merusak penampilan konkrit itu sendiri. Nah, itu yang paling saya tahu. Sebab konkrit itu sendiri, dia ada yang kita panggil karbonasi. Nah, karbonasi, apa yang dimaksud dengan karbonasi? Beton akan menyerap karbon dioksida dalam jangka waktu tertentu. Contohnya ada yang bilang, Pak, meskipun semen tidak ramah lingkungan karena memproduksi karbon dioksida sangat banyak, tapi kan nanti beton juga mengalami karbonasi, akan menyerap kembali karbon dioksidanya. Betul, tapi jumlah yang diserap itu nggak banyak. Nah, karbonasi ini buruk untuk beton, sebab dia bisa merusak tulangan. Kalau semakin banyak karbon dioksida di dalam atmosfer, dalam udara, ya konsekuensinya akan semakin banyak karbon dioksida yang diserap. Nah, meskipun rate penyerapan itu mungkin berbeda-beda melihat kualitas betonnya sendiri. Nah, tapi yang paling berbahaya Beton itu musuhnya satu, oksigen sama air. Sebab kenapa? Ya berbahaya di tulangannya. Kalau tulangannya terekspos air dengan oksigen, dia akan berkarat. Nah, kalau climate change mengakibatkan perubahan tersebut, itu bahayanya ke beton. Jadi kita bisa pikirkan aja kayak gimana air pasang surut contohnya. Beton untuk dermaga, selagi dia terendam di dalam air laut, nggak ada masalah. Tapi karena ada climate change, dia naik turun, basah, kering, basah, kering, basah, kering. Akhirnya apa? Rusak, spalling. Sebab kalau dia basah, kering. Air itu bisa masuk. Kemudian akan diserap oleh beton. Tapi kalau forever and ever ada di dalam air laut nggak ada oksigen yang bebas. Oksigennya terlarut. Jadi potensi untuk korosi untuk tulangan terjadi di dalam laut sangat kecil. Yang rusak itu yang kalau di tidal zone. Nah, kalau air permukaan laut itu naik turun, ya itu mungkin salah satu bahayanya. Climate change lain.
Baik, terima kasih waktunya. Perkenalkan, nama saya Andri, saya dari Ilmu, kebetulan saya dari dokter. Yang kebaikan tentang geopolitik Pak, kita tahu kan geopolitik di luar sudah banyak ya. Mungkin untuk dalam pendesain seperti ini, apakah sudah ada kode yang mengatur itu? Terus untuk yang kedua, apa namanya, dari karakter seperti ini, apakah ada perbedaan antara geopolitik sama dengan seperti biasa? Apakah beton yang didapatkan dari geopolitik ini bisa menyerupai atau bahkan mungkin punya turunan lebih dari orang.
Oke, terima kasih. Bagus pertanyaannya dari praktisi ya. Betul. Betul. Kalau kita ingin mendesain suatu struktur harus merefer kepada code atau standar. Di Malaysia belum ada. Di Indonesia saya kurang tahu. Belum ada juga, Bu ya?
Belum.
Pedoman teknis. Okay. But I know in Australia they have it. Australia is very well developed in geopolymer. So kalau memang perlu, you can download, you can contact Prof Martin over here. You have it. You can contact Bu Yani, right? They have a complete regulation on the geopolymer because they use it in the industry, right? What about the quality itself? I think I can show you this one. Right, this one. For me, the limitation will be the strength, right? Because let's say the scope of geopolymer that we have currently adalah di normal strength. Hanya di normal strength, sebab ada restriction untuk setting time, ada restriction untuk curing, and then any other restriction like the quality of the raw material itself, ya, kualitasnya gimana. Jadi apa yang kita bisa capai sementara ini ada di normal strength. Kalau kita ingin contohnya membuat skyscraper di sebelah kampus Manyar, pengennya 100 megapascal atau 80 megapascal. Saya agak khawatir dia belum tercapai dengan menggunakan geopolymer. Masih harus menggunakan traditional cement. Apalagi kalau mau menggunakan UHPC atau UHPC yang strength-nya sampai 175 megapascal. Sekarang ini geopolymer masih belum bisa mencapai.
Angin-angin kok sepuluh gak berwajar. Ya, apa tuh? Angin-angin. So, itu misal.
Untuk mungkin strip gider selanjutnya. Jadi itu yang sekarang ini rasanya limitation dan juga future-nya apa yang kita boleh lakukan. Kita memang harus bekerja sama dengan industri, nggak bisa lepas. Sebab kalau kita nggak kerja sama dengan industri kayak Wika, PP, ataupun Adikarya, riset kita akan berakhir di jurnal paper aja. Itu kita perlukan, ya, without applications, correct. That's why nanti mungkin minta tolong Mas ya, kalau bisa dipasang para wall-nya dari geopolymer, saya mau datang lihat. Saya mau foto. Mau undang influencer juga. Ini loh. Masuk TikTok, supaya famous geopolymernya. Gitu mungkin. Menjawab
Oke.
soalnya.
Oke. Oke, I think Profesor ya. Itu summarize ya for the concrete building material that has more potential than understanding the knowledge of the constituent material. It can continue to improve its limited function as utility material. Nah, jadi kalau ini berikan material itu memiliki banyak potensi dengan memahami pengetahuan material unsurnya akan terus dapat menyempurnakan sebagai bahan material. Untuk selanjutnya kita berfokus pada Profesor. Selanjutnya kita dulu.
Once for the second topic, but they were calling very concrete. Very helpful. That I have some information, a little change on today's event structure. So actually, we'll have like parallel session. It's a break time an hour and going to the parallel session. But unfortunately, Mr. Hugh Thomas is already not coming with us today. So maybe the parallel session is changed to be private. Private in smart class number 1. So it's just for private maybe undergraduate. But for the general participant, can leave the place after the closing session. So the days are finished. Any question as well as already finished too? So there will be a certificate submission, but again, unfortunately, Mr. Thomas is not coming to me. Already go. That Mr. Martin maybe can replace Mr. Thomas for the certificate submission. Yeah, there will be like a symbolization for the certificate submission. And for the first stop, Mr. Thomas is can be replaced by Mr. Martin. And for the 3% is hiring. Yeah. But the commercialization is welcome. And for the second topic, maybe later, Prof. Bayuaji will present the certificate for. Share screen sertifikatnya. Share screen sertifikat. So for the second topic today, our second speaker, Andri, and Prof. Bayuaji can represent the certificate and PhD.
Oh yeah.
For how this is developed in our profession. So that's the end of the all the time Mr. Margaret, always government activities. Now I go all the time to go get and lecture. Scholars from the university and to apply the curriculum. With that,
Maksudnya kegiatan banyak pasti kegiatan terima kasih.